Don't believe everything you see right now, because what you see right now isn't the big picture.
A surgeon said to me, being completely honest with you, if I were to do this surgery, it's not going to happen.
I was diagnosed with advanced metastatic prostate cancer, which had begun to spread a little bit to my lymph nodes. Found the cancer from an accident training for triathlon. I crashed my bike and had a subsequent doctor's visit, and that's when they found it. It's because we need people to know when you're in it, it sure doesn't feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, you can't even see the end of the tunnel, but there is a light. But you only get to the light if you keep walking.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Auto Great Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of having here Dr. Matt Kutz, a PhD in global leadership, award-winning author, award-winning educator, researcher, and speaker. Matt is most excited about being a husband, dad, and grandpa, and in his spare time, is insanely passionate about helping other people gain perspective and overcome the adversity and uncertainty that life brings. He does that through helping others to develop an epic mindset and practice contextual intelligence and 3D thinking. And Matthew, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt, and as Daniel just said, an author, speaker, professor, and I've dedicated a lot of my life in research and professional development to the space of enhancing your leadership literacy or leadership capacity. And that manifests in a lot of different ways, not just the traditional leadership behaviors that people think about, but a lot of different ways, such as epic behavior, which I know we'll talk about later on, and other things. So great to meet you and excited to be here.
Thank you, Matt, once again for coming into the podcast. So everybody, please give him a warm welcome. And with that, I want to start the podcast with this question. Matt, we all go through struggles in life. What was that moment when you felt that your whole world was upside down?
Yeah, it's a great question, because what you find out is what you thought was that life-changing moment earlier on doesn't end up being that life-changing moment later on. And that can be discouraging for some. For me, recently in 2023, I was diagnosed with advanced metastatic prostate cancer, which had begun to spread a little bit to my lymph nodes and my pelvis. So it was it was a very aggressive form of prostate cancer. And that was a real eye-opening moment for me. It's Peter Drucker, a famous management scholar and guru, talks about innovation a lot, and what it means to innovate, and what are the markers that are in play for innovation. And one of those things that he talks about is an incongruity. And an incongruity is when what you believe should happen doesn't happen. And there's what's supposed to happen, how life is supposed to be, and then reality proves it otherwise. And many times when we find ourselves at these moments of incongruity, it can be very disheartening and disconcerting. And for me, that certainly happened, because I was one of those people who didn't have any symptoms for prostate cancer, didn't have any reason to believe I had prostate cancer. I was very active individual, running a lot, running triathlons, 5Ks. In fact, we found the cancer from an accident training for triathlon. I crashed my bike and had a subsequent doctor's visit, and that's when they found it. But I didn't have any of the normal symptoms. And plus, I have a very high um, um, faith component involved in my life. So there were so many things that, I just didn't think this was going to happen to me. And of course, when it did, you're like, well, my belief system, my assumptions didn't match up with what was happening in reality. And so I found myself at a total place of incongruity, and I had to really reshape and reevaluate a lot of things at that moment. So that was a big one for me.
I can't imagine. Me myself, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, so it
Right.
wasn't that far. But the doctor told me either you have Crohn's disease or colon cancer, and I
Right.
was like, "What?" Like I didn't know what Crohn's disease was, but cancer is a big word, so I can imagine what it felt like for you. And you know, I put myself in your shoes because I went through something similar in a medical journey, and I think it's gonna be great for us to talk about and keep on adding to our conversation because a lot of people go through different storms in their life, and most people go through a lot of medical journeys. And in those journeys, usually there's someone that help us push past our storm.
Yeah.
Is there someone in your journey that helped you overcome, that path of your storm?
Yeah, I guess this is the good part of the story is I had many people, and I credit that to just a life of being intentional about building relationships. But I mean, the obvious person was my wife, and she went above and beyond. So in my case, in particular, my wife became an absolute champion for me. And she was my rock. She stood by me. She encouraged me. She went to all the appointments with me. We were very open and honest with each other about what this meant, what this would look like, future roles, all of those things. So I really had to lean in to my relationship with her, who helped me as a tremendous source of inspiration. But then I also had two very close friends who were by my side the whole way. So I had two friends, my brother being one of them, a tremendous help with me, as well as my physicians. I'm one of those guys with my background in healthcare and sports medicine. My formal training and education is as an athletic trainer. And as an athletic trainer here in the United States, we work with athletes for their rehabilitation, for their initial injury diagnoses and treatments, things like that, emergency care. And so I've been exposed for over 30 years to the healthcare community. Because of that, I'm very comfortable in the healthcare community. And because of that, I didn't necessarily feel obligated to, find one doctor and stick with that doctor. I actually got four different opinions and interviewed four different physicians until I actually found the one that I wanted to work with. And the same goes for all the other specialties. When you have prostate cancer, you need a urologist, you need a surgeon, you need a medical oncologist, you need a radiology oncologist, and a lot of times you need a pelvic floor physical therapist. So I went and found the people I wanted, and ironically enough, is in the United States healthcare system is you get a referral, you have your insurance, it covers a particular network provider, and you go with that because that's who your insurance covers. And I was able to find I got all those four specialties from four different huge medical providers, different care centers entirely. So that was a little headache for my insurance company, but they sorted it out. But the reason I say that is because it was very important for me to find a physician who would work with me the way I wanted to be worked with. And I found them, and they have been a tremendous support and assistance to me. So the answer to your question is yes, I definitely have, and for me, it's multiple people for sure who have really been an encouragement to me. But most importantly, my wife for sure.
Wow. I put myself there because in my journey too, a lot of people helped me get through my storm. And if I can ask this question, I would guess that those people, including your doctors, have become closer people to you than they were before everything happened.
Absolutely. 100%. In fact, I just ran into my doctor casually in a social environment, and we sat and chatted for a while and caught up and different things like that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It has created a relationship that wasn't there before for sure. And even my doctor, I wrote a book during this process, a couple of books actually, and he wrote the foreword to one of those books for me. My wife and I started a non for profit educational um, foundation for prostate cancer awareness and education. And he, of course, is a big part of that and has helped and contributed to that. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It does deepen those relationships as well.
Yeah, for me, I went to visit my surgeon a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me, you know, I would like to see you, but not in this environment.
Right.
So we get more comfortable with each other. Like I went through with him 3 surgeries, I believe, and then with the other like 3 or 4. So I had gotten closer with my doctors, my friends, my cousin and I weren't as closer as we are today
Yeah.
before the surgery. So those things happen and it
Yeah.
shows us the real people that are beside us.
And that's important. I think it's a great point, Daniel, because so many times people, they get engaged with some sort of difficulty, whether it's a healthcare difficulty, a financial difficulty, whatever it might be, and a relational difficulty. And we feel like the people that are there to help us are want to maintain this certain distance, and they're trying to be disengaged from getting involved with you personally and emotionally, and they're guarded with their empathy and things like that. And while I don't know that might be the professional standard or rule, I have not found that to be the case. And I appreciate that, because what I realized is that these people are people, especially the doctors and the different healthcare providers. And like I said, in my case, 4 or 5 different specialties. And they're people first and foremost. They're helping because they want to help. They're in the specialty that they're in because they have interest in caring for this. And uh, I never really felt that any of my medical providers or healthcare providers were just, passing me off as a number or passing me off as a person, as, just another prostate cancer patient or anything like that. I really believe and feel that, we partnered together to try to come up with a solution for this. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. The relationship deepens, the connection deepens, but it also, at least for me, has restored or reiterated my faith in the medical community as actually there being caregivers and not just there for their own benefit and their own sake.
I completely agree with that. With my doctors, I've gone to believe that they actually care.
Right. Yeah.
There was a moment in my journey when my surgeon said to me, being completely honest with you, if I were to do this surgery, it's not going to happen. I'm going to refer to you to a friend of mine who actually does this type of surgeries and has had success in
Yeah.
those surgeries. So that honesty didn't come from just me being there.
Right.
He went through multiple surgeries with me. 9-hour surgery he went through with me.
Yeah.
And he knew that if I wanted to go towards this step, he couldn't no longer be my surgeon.
Right.
So that honesty and that relationship that got close with us, right? That pushed him to tell me the truth,
Right.
right? And there was a case, I laugh at it now, but it was right before a surgery. I told my mom, my dad, and I were there, and then the surgeon came in, and he explained that to us the surgery because he liked to explain a lot. And he said, "Do you have any questions?" My dad and I were like, "No, we usually don't have any questions. Just go ahead with the surgery." But in that moment, we all looked, including the surgeon. We all looked towards my mom because my mom always had questions.
Right.
So we all turned our heads like towards my mom, and I laugh at it now because we all knew she was gonna ask a question, and in that case, it didn't happen.
That is unusual, because in my case too, I every time the doctor would say, "Do you have any questions? Do you understand what's going on?" I was always, "Yeah, sounds good to me." And my wife always had, 6 or 7 more questions to ask. And a lot of times, there's stuff I would have never found out had she not been there to ask the question.
Oh, 1,000%. If my mom wasn't there, I would have. 1,000% less information that I have
Right.
now. Okay, so I like the conversation that we're having right now. But what's the biggest lesson yet that you learned in that journey?
Wow. For me, it's to lean in. I actually help myself. I help myself by creating an acronym. So the biggest lesson has to do with what I call battle and battling cancer, running towards the battle, and being willing and able to fight. So I created an acronym and actually made a T-shirt out of it and that I wear around, and it still encouraged me today. So battle represents several things and that I learned. And one is the B stands for be brave. And so, that's hard. It's hard when you're facing any kind of medical adversity, especially one terminal that's metastasized or grown or could lead to something more significant. Your brain just starts playing games with you, right? And asking questions and what if, and you start getting nervous and wondering about what's going to happen and how long are you going to be around, etc. And so I had to encourage myself to be brave and just, lean in, so to speak, and just intentionally focus on doing the things that I know I needed to do. So that was step one. Step one was be brave. Step two was the A was armor up. And in other words, put on your protection, put on your armor. And for me, that's has to do with how I practice my faith. So I would put on um, a helmet, and a shield and a sword and a breastplate, like a suit of armor. I would try to protect. So I had the helmet. I said, I got to protect my mind, and by that I meant don't let any negative thoughts in. Control, try your best to control those thoughts. And when negative thoughts come, don't dwell on them. They're going to come. You can't stop them from coming. But when they come, you just recognize it's there and dismiss it. And then it might come again, but you recognize it's there and dismiss it. So armor up, put on your helmet, pick up, your shield and be able to defend yourself. Learn about what's going on, learn about your disease, your condition, learn about the options. These are ways that you can armor up. So that's the second thing I did is be brave, armor up. The first T in battle was triumph over fear. So again, that's being very intentional about not letting fear grip my heart. And that really helped. But your question earlier about who around you helped you. And for me, my brother and my wife I mentioned, those were the two people that I talked to most about the fear, and that's how you don't let or that's how you triumph over fear and don't let it grip your heart is you have to talk about it because fear will take you if you don't talk about it. You have to talk about what makes you scared or intimidated. And so you have to do that, triumph over fear. The second T is trust your team, which is what we were just talking about. And that is your wife, your spouse, your close community of friends, your medical team. These are your team. You need to trust them. You've made a decision to do what they're going to do and you need to trust them. Just like your doctor told you, listen, this is a surgery that you need, but I know someone who does it better than I can do it, right? And so that's trustworthy team member. Doctors don't always do that, and so that's important. We've got to trust our team. When you decide on a certain course of action and you have your team assembled around you, you need to trust them because, especially with cancer, there are so many different people out there with so many different ideas on how something should be treated or approached. So you could drive yourself crazy exploring all the different options and everybody's different idea or theory about how to treat cancer. So you have to trust your team. And then the L in battle is lean into your faith, lean into that spiritual aspect of who we are as human beings. So for me, that involved a lot of meditation. It involved a lot of prayer. It really re-engaged me with my faith community. And that was really important because again, you start asking questions and things that you might not normally ask. So engaging in your faith, I thought is very, very important lesson that I learned. And then finally, the E in battle is engage in life. And I had to be very intentional to not just sit and wait, right? It's like, listen, I have this diagnosis. It's not going away. We're going to treat it aggressively. And my doctors and my personality is let's be aggressive. Let's not no wait and see kind of a thing. Let's just go right after this and attack it head on. And part of that meant continue to live life as I lived it. I'm not going to sit around and feel sorry for myself. I'm not going to ask what if and how come and why me and all these kinds of things. That's just a waste of time. So for me, those are the big lessons that I learned that helped me carry me through the battle that I'm in. So again, be brave, armor up, triumph over fear, trust your team, lean into your faith, and engage in life. And I think those are it's six very important things that I walk away from and still use today.
I think that those are great things that you talk about because trusting your team is an important part. And trusting your team also puts you to the realization of knowing who your team is.
Exactly.
Because sometimes in life we have people that you think are friends, but when the hardship comes, they are no longer friends. That happened
Exactly.
in my journey, right? I learned who truly was by my side.
Yeah.
And those are the people that you need to trust. And you're right. Attack head on. Don't
Yeah.
wait because if you wait, the longer it's going to take for you to come back. If
Yes.
if I waited longer for me to realize, because I did ask myself those questions, why this happened to me? Why am I doing here?
Mhm.
I asked myself those questions. But if I didn't come to the realization that in life I had to move on and attack head on, I c- I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
Right.
That simple.
Yeah.
So I think those are great words that you just mentioned. I think that is gonna get me to your next question. What motivated you to use your journey as a tool towards helping others?
Yeah. One, it has to do with that battle acronym, engage in life, lean in, all of these things, means you've got to be on the offense and instead of the defense. And I think most people who endure any kind of hardship, again, doesn't have to be healthcare, it could be financial, could be relationally. One of the things that is a big temptation is to just withdraw and just I want to be alone, I need to be with my thoughts, I want to be by myself, and that's okay, and that's actually normal at the beginning, but because I did the same things too. But eventually you have to realize that, wait a second, I'm going through whatever it is I'm going through for a reason. Now I happen to be of the opinion and believe that everything does happen for a reason, and I also believe that those things ultimately work out for our benefit and our good. So if you get something like cancer and you're wondering, okay, well, how can this possibly benefit me? What's the silver lining or whatever? And no matter how um, optimistic you are, there's still a sense of, wait a second, you have cancer. So I'm not proposing that we ignore reality. In fact, that's one of the big lessons that I did learn. I don't ignore the reality that I have. I'm not in denial about what I have. But what one way to get through that is you got to understand that what I'm going through, other people need help with. And for myself, there wasn't very many groups or organizations that talk to men about prostate cancer then and the side effects. The prostate cancer itself is one thing, and that's generally relatively treatable. In my case, it was much more advanced, so there was a lot more involved, but there's all kinds of options to treat prostate cancer. But what men who have prostate cancer generally do not talk about are all the side effects from the medications, from the treatments, etc. Androgen deprivation therapy, for example, which is one of the therapies I had to go on, ADT, which basically is removing the male androgens or testosterone, which is the main male androgen, removing the testosterone hormone from my body because prostate cancer feeds on testosterone. So when you lose testosterone as a man, that has a dramatic effect on your life, your lifestyle, your mood, your emotions, your feelings, sexual activity, strength. All of these things are dramatically impacted. And there's not a lot of men out there talking about those things. So I thought, well, if I'm having these questions and 1 in every 8 men have prostate cancer, which is by the same stats as females with breast cancer, by the way, there seems to be a lot more help out there for females with breast cancer than there are for men with prostate cancer. So let's try to do something to help them. So my wife and I created this foundation. The name of the foundation is Battle for the Bulge. And you can check out all our information at battleforthebulge.com. And we do 5K races and things like that to raise money and awareness for prostate cancer education and advocacy. So that's what motivated me, is understanding that there's people out there who have these questions, who have nowhere to turn or no one else to talk to about not just the cancer, but the side effects that this type of cancer really wreaks havoc on in a man. And so I felt I needed to do what I could to help them as in the space that I could help them in.
Oh, that's great. And I commend you for that because, in the world we are right now, we need as much help as possible.
Right.
Right. And there are many people out there. And that's why I created this podcast, right? Because everybody has a unique journey, right? They have that unique storm that they went through that can help someone out. And if they share that journey and what helped them, right, that is going to help someone out there say, if they did it, I can do it.
Right.
They have that person that they can see, oh, they did it. This is how they did it. Let me try it out
Correct.
to see if that's work. I might have to go to one of your foundational runs to raise charity there, and I can, because I'm looking for to helping as many people as possible, and I also like to exercise myself. So I think that's a great combination for me. At least I'm doing this for the younger audience because I feel that's where they need the help the most.
Yeah.
And it's not only I'm not trying to help only those with Crohn's disease. I'm just trying to help those kids, young adults that are going through something hard right now,
Right.
realize that they have so much potential, right? And if they just see past the storm and they see the light and come out of the gray, that's why the name, right? They have a bright future ahead.
Right.
And sometimes we don't see that light when we are at the bottom of the tunnel.
We really don't. And we need to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why you're doing what you're doing, is why I do what I do. It's because we need people to know when you're in it, it sure doesn't feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, you can't even see the end of the tunnel, but there is a light. But you only get to the light if what? If you keep walking. You've got to keep moving when you're in the tunnel. And that's such an important message, I think is critical.
Yeah, there is an allegory that I like from Plato. That's called the allegory of the cave. There is I want to try to paint a picture as best as I can. Right? There are people at the end of the cave, right? And they cannot see the person who is behind them. They only see shadows from a light. One of those prisoners is free from the chain. And once they look at the light of the fire in front of them, they're blinded. But as time goes by, they are used to that fire and they get passed by it. And they see passed by it the people that were doing the shadows that they weren't seeing because that's the only thing they could see when they seen. And he kept moving. And when he came out of the cave into the light, he was blinded again. But after time, he got used to it, and now he can see everything.
Yep.
So I think that's the allegory, just in a quick summary. Right? It's much deeper than that, but
Yeah.
it talks about
That's important. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Daniel.
you're good. It's about the persistence of the person, right? You're gonna be blinded at first, you're gonna continue, you're gonna be blinded again, but you're gonna continue, and you're gonna get towards that point that you're gonna feel like you had the knowledge.
That's right. And that actually is a fantastic allegory. The rest of that allegory is, so when that prisoner got out of that cave and he saw an actual tree, for example, because some of the shadows were trees and animals and things, and they only ever saw them in that dimension. He gets out and he sees a real tree. And he says, "Oh my goodness, it's brown, it's big, it's got a big wide stump, it's got beautiful leaves on the end of it. When it blows in the wind, it moves and all of this." And so he goes, and the rest of the allegory is he goes back into the cave to tell the other guys who are still in the cave that, "Hey, listen, I saw this thing called a tree, and this is what it looks like." And they're like, "No, you're crazy," because they only ever saw the tree as a shadow. So to them, it was this black imprint on the wall. It didn't move. It was all the same color. It was one dimensional. And here it is, he's describing the real truth to them, but they don't see it. And that's kind of what we're doing with what I'm doing. It's what you're doing, is helping people see there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're going back into the cave with people and telling them, listen, it's going to be okay. If you get out, you just need to keep moving. Don't believe everything you see right now, because what you see right now isn't the big picture. It's not the whole picture. And that's our job, and something that I have found myself doing is exactly that. In fact, it's so ironic that you mentioned that. One of the very when I first got through this diagnosis a couple years ago and begin to talk about it, I used that same analogy and allegory and tell people, about, listen, we can't just depend on everything that we see right now. It's going to become more clear to you later on, but only if you keep moving and don't settle in and become comfortable. Because in Plato's allegory, of course, they were prisoners in there, and they refused to move. When they were let free, they didn't want to go free because they were afraid of what was out there and afraid that the truth that they created in their mind would be exposed and wrong. So they just preferred to stay in the cave. And one of the things that we need to do, and this is why I'm so grateful for a podcast like Out of the Gray, is it's helping people understand that we need to do what we can do to help those people out and to overcome that. And then, of course, not be one of those people ourselves.
100%. And one of the things that is important when we get out of the storm is leadership.
That's right.
So, how can someone find leadership in their most troubled times?
Oof. In a troubled time, it's hard to see leadership. It really is. That's a great question, because they're just only worrying about survival, and what's right in front of them right here, right now. And leadership is something that actually has its best influence or its best work during times of trouble and turbulation. In fact, it's one of those things. I mean, you mentioned it earlier when you talked about, you find out in moments like these who your friends really are. You thought these people would be with you, and then they end up not being, and other people came through for you who you might not have thought would come through for you. Leadership is similar and like that, because what we think we hold relative to leadership skills or leadership ability is actually not provable until we go through significant hardship of some kind. And it's only then that we truly realize what sort of leader we are. And so for me, and this is a hard lesson to learn. I'm not saying this is easy, but for me, I know when I experience difficulty, hardship, stress, turmoil, I have trained myself up until now to be able to recognize those moments as a leadership development moment. So how I would answer that question is, with whoever, you listener you have, and if they're in a hard time right now, it's like, leadership is the last thing I'm thinking about. I would say it's probably more um, on your mind than you realize. You're thinking about leadership development and strategies and stuff like that. Yeah, those things are secondary, but how you behave, how you act, how you respond, your self leadership, your ability to think about how you're thinking. Fancy word in science is metacognition. Thinking about our thinking, and we recognize, wait a second, that thought's not a healthy thought. I need to stop that thought. That's leadership. Whether it's leading yourself or even in our cases with our loved ones around us. There were moments when my wife would get discouraged as well. And I would have to encourage her. No, honey, we're not going there. We're not going to believe that. She did that for me. I did that for her. And those are leadership realities. Those are the real leadership literacies that show up during those times. So My answer to the question is, how do you see them is you have to understand that the actual stress of the moment you're in itself is your behavior in that time is how you lead. And that's it really the answer.
I think that's a great answer because I in my journey, right? I went through, and sometimes if I would let my family think that I was in a depression, right, and I couldn't get out of myself of thinking on negative things, how would the journey be affected by it?
Right.
Big. It's gonna have big influence if I think negatively, and they see a negative influence. So I had to put a smile on my face, even though I didn't feel like it, right?
Right.
I had to put a smile on my face because if I went down, everybody went down.
Right. Right.
Sometimes it's not only the people outside of us that are gonna help us, but you have to guide your own boat.
Right. I agree. That's a great point, guiding your own boat. Because again, as you go, the people will go. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need help and support and they don't help us. Of course they do. Nor, I think it's important to say, too, nor does that mean that I'm in denial. If I don't feel like smiling, but smiling anyways, that's not denial. I'm not being disingenuous. I'm not lying to myself. It's actually helping me reframe my mind. And I need to understand that in order for me to get to where I need to be, I need to have a proper frame of mind. I need to master my brain, as it were. My mind um, is not subject to my brain. My brain is subject to my mind. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that, if we generally consist or talk about the triune nature of a human, body, mind, and spirit, right? So we have a physical body. We know that organs, muscles, kidney, liver, brains, all these things. We have these things. That's our body. Then we have our mind, which is what traditionally is referred to as our soul. Our soul is our mind, our emotions, our will, our feelings. That's our soul. And then we have a spirit. And then so when you talk about your brain and the mind brain connection, for example, we know, we being the scientific community knows that if I don't feel like smiling, but smile anyways, it actually increases my mood and improves my mood. And even chemical release in the brain, serotonin, other chemicals like that in the brain are increased, and it actually has a physical effect on my actual mood. So it's really important to understand that what I think, the thoughts that I have, the negative thoughts, etc., the things, the questions that are negative oriented questions, I can't let those govern my mind. If my brain controls my mind, then my will, my emotions, my feelings, my thought life will decrease and go negative. But if I let my soul control my brain, then it increases. How does that work? You make yourself smile when you don't feel like smiling. You make yourself, you encourage yourself by saying positive things when you don't feel positive. These are the types of things we do. And that's what I mean by having your soul be in charge of your mind or your brain instead of your brain being in charge of your soul. And that's exactly what you're describing. And I think that's very, very important. And that is one of the fundamental attributes of a successful leader. A successful leader is able to communicate with other people. They call it vision casting. They're able to create a vision or a mental image. That's what a vision is. Vision, I create this mental image in my mind, in my brain, about what the future should look like, what we hope it looks like, what we're excited about in the future. And you focus on those things. And that's what a good leader does. They encourage, they motivate, they inspire people by what they say and what they do. So if I want to be that leader, then I need to say and do the things that move people in that direction. And that those things include myself. If I want to be happy, then I smile and I talk to people and I communicate and I open up. And then all of a sudden I find myself, I'm not even aware of it, but now I'm happier. And those are very, very important realities that are critical for, as you say, getting out of the gray.
Great answer. I think if you paint the picture towards your crew members. Right? If you paint the wrong picture, nobody's gonna follow you.
Right.
Right. And if you paint a picture and it's a great picture, right, and people follow you, there's gonna be some people that are not, and that's totally fine. Right? Because those visions are not meant for everybody.
Right.
And like we mentioned before, you're gonna find out who's truly your friends. Right. And in that journey, you're gonna find new people, right, that are gonna help you get towards that vision.
Yeah.
Right. I had friends, I lost some friends, but I gained new ones
Right.
that
Right.
help me in my journey right now and are helping me towards the future.
That's right.
Right. So you're right. We have to paint a vision. And if we paint a good vision, a positive vision, the likelihood that we're gonna achieve it is good. Because you have the picture, for example, of running your foundation, raising money towards a positive cause. Right.
Right.
And you're raising that vision towards many people. I don't know how many people were working in the foundation, but towards many people,
Right.
right? In my journey, I'm painting the picture of, I'm trying to help people out there during their most troubled times and overcome that challenge, right? That's the vision I'm trying to create. If we create a picture of like, I don't see if I'm going to make it out. I don't think so.
Right.
Everybody is going to fall out of there. So you have to be careful on what you say, not only to yourself, but to the people around you, because
Right.
everybody is
Yep.
going to work towards the goal that you're painting.
That's right. Very true.
And with that, is there any more knowledge between your time as a prostate cancer warrior and as a coach that you would like to share with the audience before we end the podcast?
Yeah. That's one of the things that I did, again, not just running the foundation, but when I had to go through my radiation, I had to go and do the most significant radiation that they could. So the highest dose for the longest period of time, which was 40 days. So I did 40 days of rather intense radiation. And again, at the beginning, it felt like nothing. I actually wondered, it's like, are they even doing anything? But after a while, it really began to wear on you. And one of the things that I now know was a blessing now, but I hated it then, was the 40 days of radiation have to be done every day at the same time, et cetera. So I had to cancel 40 days of my life. And within those 40 days of my life, I do a lot of public speaking and traveling. I had to cancel all my traveling. I had to cancel at least 4 public speaking gigs that I had planned, et cetera. So that was discouraging to me because I love those things. I love doing those things. And so I found myself trapped in my house for 40 days, waiting to go to radiation every day. So I said to myself, I said, you know what? I told my wife, I said, I'm going to make a plan because I can't just sit here and wait for radiation, every day. So I'm going to try to write 1,000 words every day for 40 days. And just as a personal challenge, just to write, it was meant to be like a journal. I was just writing my thoughts and my feelings. And I just wanted to have a log of what I was going through and feeling for those 40 days. Well, long story short is after those 40 days, I had a large manuscript of somewhere over like 46,000 words. And that became a book that I recently released called Becoming Epic. And the title of the book is Becoming Epic. And the subtitle is How to Use Excellence, Perspective, or Perception, Inspiration, and Compassion to Overcome Mediocrity. And for me, mediocrity, I love your metaphor of the gray in the cave, because to me, being mediocrity is living in the gray. And so we want to get people to move out of the gray or come out of the gray. So that's overcoming mediocrity. So I developed this 4-part process of overcoming mediocrity, or coming out of the gray, as you would say. And that's epic. The epic mindset is 4 behaviors. Being epic. The E stands for be excellent, becoming excellent in everything that I do, and understanding that excellence is not perfection. That's one of the things that keeps so many people from doing excellent work or becoming excellent, is they think that excellence is perfection, and it's just not. It's perfection is the enemy of excellence, in fact. So we talk about excellence and what that is and how you become excellent. Then we talk about developing perception and how important it is that we learn to see correctly what's going on around us. And I introduce and teach a model in that called 3D thinking, how everything that we do needs to revolve around thinking in three dimensions of time: hindsight, insight, and foresight. And how each of those things, when they're operating uh, collectively, collaboratively, increase your perception. Then we talk about inspiration and how important it is that you don't just lean on people from the outside for inspiration. Now, we need to do that, but we also need to understand that I also host inspiration within me as well. And I need to learn how to get that out. And that's what I meant when I was talking about I have to make my brain obey my soul, not the other way around. So that's inspiration. And then finally, compassion. And this is something we've been talking about from the beginning of our podcast, or your podcast, is this idea that, we want to help other people get out of the place they're in if they're having a hard time, helping them. You use Plato's, allegory, helping them get out of the cave, helping them come out of the gray. And in order for us to do that, we need to have compassion as well, which means walking alongside one during suffering. That's what compassion is. And so I think that's the critical thing. So all of that put together, my big recommendation or my big ask is think about, what it means to become epic. And you can get that book on my website. You can get it on Amazon. It's in the bookstores anywhere you can get books. Becoming Epic by Matthew Kutz. My website is matthewkutz.com and battleforthebulge.com. And you can contact me there. My emails are there. My contact information is on both websites.
Perfect. I was gonna ask where people can follow you, but you got
I
ahead of
jumped the
myself.
gun. I jumped the gun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You read my mind.
Yes, we'll
So
go with that one.
I will leave all those links down in the description so that people can follow you and reach out to you. Oh, and also, if you need help, you can reach out to both of us.
That's right.
If you need any sort of help, we're here to help you. That's the purpose of this podcast. Is the purpose of Matthew's journey and goals. So I think it's important if you are trying and seek help if you need to, right? Don't be afraid of it. And with that, I want to end the podcast. Thank you, Matt, for
Thank you
coming
very much,
here.
Daniel. It was a ton of fun, great conversation, and I'm really proud of the work you're doing. You're doing great work.
Thank you. Thank you. And no, I had a blast with the conversation. I felt like we were splitting bars in between each other. And I think this help us is gonna help a bunch of people out there. And I hope that if you like this podcast and you felt like it impacted your life, don't forget to comment down below because those comments are what really drives us to push forward and keep doing this kind of content so that we can keep helping more people out there. Also share with the people that you love so that we can keep spreading this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the ring bottom. And with that, I want to end the podcast. May God bless you all and take care. Thank you, Matt, again.
God bless.